Have you noticed how much the way other people see you influences the way that you see yourself? In the English language, we have a whole catalogue of words that describe character traits. Angry, arrogant, compassionate, kind, has a great sense of humour, gifted, Mr. Know-all, weird, shy, confident, egotistical, leader, realistic, creative, grumpy, curious, seductive, genuine, you name it. While I was reading that list, did you notice that some of those so-called characteristics resonated with you? You thought, that's me, and others you didn't have any reaction to or probably reacted negatively. My question is, have you ever wondered what makes you think of yourself as being a certain way? If you think you're a gifted one, a curious one, or a seductive one, why do you think you are that? I propose that most of the time we think of ourselves being a certain way because other people have given us feedback that we are like that. Early in life, we behaved in some ways, not necessarily all the time, and our parents, teachers and friends who observed us doing something shared their feedback in the form of a character trait. You're angry. She's gifted. We've been attributed something that we think of as a character trait, and it got us in trouble. Instead of seeing a character trait for what it is, namely an abstract concept referring to a collection of actions and behaviours generalized from the outside, we mistook it for something real or inherent about ourselves. What's more, we believed it was us. Let's be honest. You do not think of yourself as being selfish, a liar, fragile, cynical, precocious, or a golden child unless you are told you are one. Once you start thinking that we are a certain way, we simultaneously limit ourselves to being that way, and what's more, because we think that that characteristic is us. Now we must survive that characteristic. Why? Because if that characteristic is us, then if it disappears, we will disappear with it too. I was recently sent an interesting article about Spanish, the Spanish language. It turns out Spanish speakers make a distinction between being as a fact and temporarily being as a temporary way, a mode of being. I'm going to quote from this article. Take, for example, the two forms of the verb to be. In English, we simply are, but in Spanish, we can be a certain way temporarily, está, or more permanently, ser. This comes in handy when considering negative situations. In English, I could be overweight. In Spanish, I can be permanently overweight, which translates to ser gorda, or I could be temporarily overweight, or está gorda. The latter is transient and entertains the possibility of change, which can itself encourage motivation towards change. My proposition is that we can make this distinction between two ways of being in our experience too. Notice that when you describe yourself as being a certain way, let's say you think you're an arrogant person, you unconsciously use the verb are in its permanent sense. You mean that you are arrogant as a fact. That's who you are. You are arrogant. If you identify with being arrogant as a fact of reality, you will interpret all your interactions and behaviours from this assumption. Whatever you believe is true of yourself, that is exactly what influences all interpretations that you make of your actions, feelings, thoughts, and also the world and other people. If you think you are inherently arrogant, every time you have a compassionate thought, you will interpret it through the prism of being inherently arrogant. Maybe you'll think, I'm only having this thought because I want to show everyone that I'm better than them so that they can see how kind I am, and in fact that is very arrogant of me, so the truth is I'm arrogant. Sounds familiar? If you are someone who is used to whipping yourself up for your inner badness, the interpretation above will ring true for you. Now, let's imagine you think of yourself as being arrogant, but in the sense of temporarily feeling or acting arrogant. Like in that Spanish example of está gorda, being temporarily overweight. If you think you're temporarily arrogant, and maybe this is a feature of your current mode of being, or maybe you picked up this arrogance somewhere on your way, this opens you wide up for transformation. The same logic applies to gifted, curious, pessimistic, or any other character trait that you mixed up yourself with as you were growing up among people who told you that you were this way. That leaves you curious. What were you like before you agreed with other people that you were a certain way? I'll leave that for you to explore. Now you are an adult. You can see all these character traits for what they are, repetitive behaviors based on which other people called you something. If you feel that these traits prevent you from manifesting your full potential, you can let go of them and know you will still be, because you never were, any of these characteristics in the first place. You can explore what you are from this open state without presumption and create new ways of being for yourself that won't be conditioned but by what you were made to believe you are. You can temporarily be any way you want, or not any way at all. Can you see the freedom and power in such a realization? Perhaps when you start exploring what you are, you will find something ineffable but solid, which gives you the consistency of being you, whatever you do, wherever you go. That something is not a character trait. You know that you are, but you're not a character trait. It's not a mode of temporary being, but something permanent. What that something is, I want you to explore that in your direct experience. Bye-bye. If you like this video, consider supporting my channel by sharing these explorations with a friend. If you think there is value in what I'm doing, please consider chipping in on Patreon, where you can also unlock exclusive shadow work and conscious communication materials that I post there for patrons only. Whatever you choose, I thank you for joining me on this path very deeply. See you soon.